Manvi Bhalla, you've been active in the environmental movement for many years as a student. And one of the highlights of your activism that drew national attention was the creation of Shake Up the Establishment. Back in 2019, you launched a campaign to focus on environmental policies of political parties, candidates prior to the federal election of that year. Looking back, it's been a few years now. What impact did that initiative have on building awareness of the climate crisis and making politicians accountable?
Yeah, I love this question because we've been talking a lot about, the next election and in conversations about how we will organize efforts for community efforts around the next election. We reflect on like the impact of our past initiatives and the lessons learned. And I think our first campaign, which was what you described, the kind of the chart that we made that provided non-editorialized perspectives from each party and the commitments of each party leading up to the 2019 federal election. The impact of that was that it began so many intergenerational conversations across political divides about this issue and really set forth a huge cultural kind of phenomenon amongst young people within Canada. It sparked so many conversations, and I still get people coming up to me saying that that was really like one of their entryways into having those conversations with their family members and their community members. So qualitatively, I can say the impact is still resounding, and the work since then has continued that trajectory of maintaining conversations about these issues across political divides, across cultural divides. When we first started, we didn't track very well, I have to say, because we didn't know we'd be this big. Since then, we've been more diligent in tracking it, and I can say that we feel pretty confident we've definitely influenced thousands of young people across the country. We try to use those strategies that really worked, particularly effective communications campaigns on social media, really worked for us. And that's what led to our most recent federal election campaign being called Not Voting Effing Sucks, because it turns out that young people really want to speak their own language when it comes to getting out the vote. So we wanted to be authentic to that. And that's what led to that very interesting choice in campaign title. But that too was a very strategic kind of lesson learned from the impacts of the first campaign.
So you've said you're going to be involved in the next federal election if it happens this year or in 2025. You still feel that you need to shake up the establishment on the climate crisis?
Oh, like 100%. No question about it. I think the thing is that now more than ever, I mean, every year since 2019, if we even just kind of use that as a timeline, young people have only become more and more aware of the urgency of the issue. And at the same time, the sometimes, complacent approach of policymakers and others in leadership to favor profits or industry or other kind of decisions, factoring in other kinds of factors into their decision making above the health and well-being of people and the survivability of the planet in the context of the young people who have inherited this. With those sentiments, there's only an increasing sense that young people want to put their energy into organizing for change. And what that means is that Shake Up the Establishment kind of acts as a medium to allow for young people to do that, providing them with the skills and training and community that they need to be able to channel that energy into ensuring that we hold policymakers accountable and we make consistent progress given the timelines that are imposed on us by the climate crisis.
Well, you've been an activist for about 10 years or so. What sustains your passion for this work, this commitment as a community organizer?
Yeah, this is also a great question because we just wrote a book about it at Shake Up the Establishment after about 2 years of discussions and conversations, because we were asking ourselves this question as well as young people: how long can we do this, and at the rate that we're doing it, and in experiencing the rising cost of living and burnout and all these other things we have going on, how do we sustain the work? And so we just wrote the book. It's right here, actually. Practicing Rest, Recovery, Resistance, an interactive dreaming journal. And we wrote it kind of as a love letter for climate activists, community organizers, and engaged citizens, offering sort of the lessons that we've learned as an organization, if I were to summarize it, I would say that it's a combination of feeling like I absolutely have to. It's a responsibility that I take very seriously. Being within community, I think it's a responsibility everybody has. But at the same time, the like sustainability of it comes from an ethic of caring about myself, caring about others, ensuring that I'm taking care of, myself as part of this process, which means that I'm investing in, taking rest when I need to. I mean, I always stay engaged. I feel like I said, I have a responsibility to stay engaged, but in upholding that responsibility, I also have to take care of myself so I can make sure I stay engaged for the long term. And I'm not just in it in like, reacting to, one policy that comes out and then completely burning out from that process, but really finding a sustained way to engage long term, because it's a lifelong commitment to care about, the world around you and do what you can to help it be the best it can be. So there's a fine balance in that.
Well, we know from various studies, internationally, national, that the climate crisis is having a negative impact on the mental health, especially on young people. What's been your experience? I know you've been asked this question many times before, but share with listeners and viewers your experience and that of your peers.
Yeah, I mean, overwhelmingly, I think we cycle through feelings of just immense like sadness. We feel anxious. I've had so many conversations with people where they just feel completely helpless. And I have to say that that's a normal feeling, but I don't like to dwell in that state for too long personally. I feel as somebody who's neurodiverse or somebody who's experiencing the world through like with my ADHD, sometimes I feel it's definitely impacted the way that I work in this space. And I'm definitely susceptible to feeling more anxious, more depressed in certain situations. And so just being aware of my own mental health and keeping my own mental health good outside of this work is a great way to ensure that in the context of this work, which can be really heavy sometimes, that I'm taking care of myself, as I said. For me, that looks like spending a lot of time in nature. Dr. Melissa Lem, who she's quite big on being a doctor as part of Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment and prescribing nature. She's been a huge influence on me personally as a mentor and as a friend who she's, I think, said that for people with ADHD, spending time in nature, 20 minutes in nature is about as much good as medications can provide in terms of concentration. So even just knowledge is power, learning more about how spending time in nature, building relationships with community, finding actions that can help you feel a returned sense of agency over these uncertainties. All of these things can really help, and they've personally helped me so much. But I would be lying if I said that there weren't times when I felt really, really bummed out about some of the issues that I work on. And when that's the case, sometimes you just gotta feel your feelings.
Right. Well put. I want to touch on your hopes and thoughts for the future, but before doing so, I want to get your thoughts about messaging that encourages individuals these days to do what they can to make our planet livable. What do you think about that approach?
Yeah, I feel this is exciting for me to talk about more because I don't get asked about communication, and I actually have a background in health risk communication and health promotion. So how can we talk to people in ways that can, get them to do behavior changes that are good for them, essentially? And through that kind of view, alongside the experiences I've had in organizing, I can say that for one, blame is like the worst tool. Blame and fear and clickbaiting. I feel those are sort of the ineffective tools that lead to people feeling more and more sort of like the whole thing is their responsibility to solve, So while I think it's productive to offer solutions that individuals can take, like, like reducing waste or using public transport, like, there are very important individual actions. If they're framed in constructive ways that bring people into the conversation, they're way more likely to be adopted than if they're presented as sort of, like you are responsible for this if you do this problematic behavior. We need to think about climate in all contexts of our lives, and so I want to see more and more climate communications that, like you kind of mentioned, are community oriented around collective growth. So if we can use like health co-benefits as a framing, it's really fantastic. If we say, if you are going to take, public transit to work more often, or active transport, you're also helping your physical health, So for people, it's not just about reducing emissions, it's also about like, what do I get out of it?
So, in that context, do you feel your generation has an added responsibility to address these climate issues to even fix the climate crisis?
I feel we completely take that on. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, every conversation I have, people feel that it's absolutely our responsibility. Even people that I talk to that are not necessarily activists or organizers, I haven't talked to that many people that don't know about it. Like I said, I haven't had a conversation from anybody, even very young children up into, older young adults. Everybody across the board has some sense of awareness of the impending doom of this situation. Some feel positive about it, like in the sense that they feel it'll change within our lifetimes and be well within our control. Others don't feel as optimistic, I would say, but if the question is just, do young people feel this is our job, then it's certainly one we feel we've inherited and must deal with regardless. And what that looks like is different for everyone. But yeah.
The focus has evolved with your organization, Shake Up the Establishment, to one of focusing on climate justice. Talk a bit about that a bit more. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, honestly, this focus originates really from my personal history as an organizer. I haven't always been an environmentalist in the most traditional sense. I've never been sort of a single issue activist. My kind of experience originates from anti-poverty work, anti-racism, gender equality, food security, agricultural sustainability. So like a wide array of issues. And coming into the climate and environmental spaces, when I did, I really felt that, knowing with my public health background, that certain communities are disproportionately impacted or are made vulnerable, to having a harder time to adapting to changes in their environment. So with this knowledge, I brought it into this organizing space of mine. And I asked people when we were first wrapping up our 2019 campaign, and I said, we tried to bring this in a little, but the issue is that the climate crisis or climate change doesn't inherently implicate that. So we decided to move towards a climate justice approach, which in a very short summary is that we view it that climate crisis is anything that affects social, ecological, political, like factors and exacerbates these inequities, and also that there are disproportionately affected communities. And we want to make sure that our response to the climate crisis and co-occurring environmental and biodiversity crises doesn't leave anybody behind.
Right. So what gives you hope about the future for a healthier planet?
I have to say the first thing is that in the many years that I've been working in organizing, I literally started when I was in grade 5. And I was very young, and I remember just being so excited about learning about so many things and seeing myself as an active person who could help alleviate issues and just work with people, like teamwork, to solve problems. And as I've gone through the various movements and through these various spaces, I've only seen the momentum pick up. So I feel, it was not cool to be an activist when I was young. It was so not cool. Even in my undergrad years, I was very much the outlier. I was very outspoken a lot of the time. So I would say that seeing activists, they still get a lot of flack, but seeing that the public opinion is beginning to support that, there are critical things that community organizing does that the public sector can't provide, that the for-profit sector doesn't provide. Seeing the value of nonprofit and voluntary organizing efforts in improving the quality of life for people, that momentum of support has only increased over the years. And it's what gives me hope, because it reminds me that people are beginning to see that we are all connected. we're all in community and we all should take care of each other. And so that ethic of care is returning to kind of our public consciousness. And it's not so much about individualism and consumerism and materialism and individual gain over community benefit. So that's what gives me hope, I think, is just seeing more and more people become activated as people that care about what's happening around them.
Great. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. Thanks so much for your time.
Of course. Thank you. Thanks for thinking of me. I'm excited. And